Harry and the Hamster Wheel by Oshri and Cecilia. Dedicated to all of us on our hamster wheels. Thank you, Ella, Noah, and Eden, for having me read this to you for 2 years before it was put together. Thank you, Audrey, for all the greatest hamstery chats we've had over these years. Harry and the Hamster Wheel. Harry was hurried, and Harry was harried, and Harry was tired. Each day, running round and round his wheel, barely pausing for even the quickest meal. But just how dissatisfied could he feel? What hamster lived a life of greater appeal? Of course, there were stories about hamsters from before. But stories were easy enough to ignore. And it wasn't so bad. After all, he kept slim, and he'd be a fool of a hamster to change on a whim. But sometimes he'd remember the tales of his grandma Hannah, who'd been rumored to have toured something called the Savannah, and who was known for her eccentric manner. And great-great-granduncle Horatio, who'd been known to sunbathe on the patio while listening to songs on a thing called radio. Their stories sometimes made him wonder, might my wheel-bound ways not be a big blunder? But then the words of distant hamcestors, Harold and Horace, would come to him in a cautionary chorus. If you stop your wheel from spinning, forget about any treat for the winning. And run, run, furry one, a good hamster's wheels are always spun, so don't be tempted by the myth called fun. And there was the tale of Uncle Henry, who once tried to stop, but instead got his back fur stuck to the top. Or the one about Grandpa Humperdinck, who tried to get an afternoon wink. Getting off too soon, he was flung to the moon. Harry didn't want to end up like them. So when his mind wandered, he'd try to nip it in the stem. But he couldn't help it when he had those dreams about sunshine and laughter and water flowing in streams. Eventually, he grew the courage to be curious, at times allowing himself to feel softly furious. He began to wonder about his freedom, and when he had ideas and questions, he'd feed 'em. He learned that his wheel spun around a center. So whether he moved slower or faster, there seemed to be no risk of disaster. And he began to see now very clearly the wheel was somehow stationary. No matter his groove, the wheel spun, but from its base, it did not move. Then one day, as he was exploring his home, he noticed something he hadn't before. that in his cage near his water was a little mirror. From then on, Harry would only run his wheel at a pace that he could clearly observe his own calm, fuzzy face. And if it looked like he was at all in a strain, he'd slow down the wheel to lessen the pain. One afternoon, while running in a more balanced way, he saw something that made him call out, "Hey!" For in the mirror he saw someone else. His Grandma Hannah's spirit had arrived in stealth. She smiled her warm Grandma Hannah smile and spoke. "Why are we chasing? Why are we fleeing? Time wastes when we haste instead of being. My dear, I've been watching you for a while. And the secret you're seeking to this tiresome game, the secret, love, is in your name." And with that, she disappeared. Back to the spirit land she steered. But Harry knew she'd left a treasure, a key that could alter his life beyond measure. And so Harry repeated day after day in an unprecedentedly disciplined way. Harry, 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 Harry. Until of his own name he became nearly wary. He said, "This was supposed to open up my world, but I've simply continued to whirl and whirl. Instead of having more merriment, I feel like a guinea pig in an experiment." But day after day, he kept on going, though sadly still no secret was showing. Then, one day, when he was falling asleep, something happened before he was out too deep. "Harry, Harry, Harry, Harry," he repeated, and with the coming of sleep, the sounds drifted into a blurry har, 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 har. Then ha, 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 ha. Then ha, 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 ha. And then Harry was dozing no more. The laughter boomed from his belly. His heart did soar. This must be what Grandma Hannah had meant. Finding laughter and joy all this time he'd spent. He laughed and he laughed and he laughed and laughed. He laughed and saw that joy is a raft. Over time, in this way, Harry mastered his wheel, and his days were filled with his laughter's peal. His name had so long echoed in his ear. Now laughter's song brought him joyful tears. With this laughter, now his life could expand, and he started to imagine a greater plan. Sitting on the center of his wheel, which he had tipped over in a bout of joyful zeal, he journeyed with a smile on his face, laughter and gentleness guiding his pace. He knew now that the true measure of movement is not about speed, but what matters truly is a heart at peace. Each day, his gusto for life grew, and with laughter as his compass, he steered the wheel anew, savoring each precious second in all that he'd do. The Bend.